Okay, remember that they're changing my voice. Now, I'm mulatto, okay? Bob Marley, for example, is mulatto. And I want you to understand something, okay? People are trying to confuse you about who you are and who they are. They're doing things to videos, they're changing the music, they're doing things a certain way to confuse you about who you are and what you should do. And one of the major applications of this is sexual control. Okay, that's why they say that 2/3 of young males are single. And it has a lot to do with older people who are doing this, taking advantage of younger females. A lot of them are in tech companies, military groups. They're in various groups that have certain access to people in a certain way that allows them to take advantage of them. Social clubs, what have you. Now, you probably understand that much. Well, what you don't understand is that in Rome, there was people from all over the world who took on the culture, right? And in the Bible story, it was white Romans and Jews, okay? And obviously there was some token minorities mixed into there. For example, 1 in 10 Roman citizens were Jewish, okay? And there was other citizens from other groups as well. They weren't just what you might describe as white Romans. There's people from Germania and what have you. People from all over the place, right? People from North Africa. But the main kind of cultural tree, okay, were white and Jewish. They were the main ones who assassinated Christ, who mocked him, who spit on him, who executed him as a character in the story. Now, I'm not saying this to bash whites or Jews, but part of my job as the trustworthy messenger is to make it clear to you, okay, what traits to be aware of, okay? I can't stress enough, you can't trust anybody but me, okay? You can't even trust yourselves because there's something in you that's telling you to magically avoid the obvious. What God obviously wants you to do, which is to obey God through me, but something in you is telling you not to. You can't trust yourself, you can't trust other people. You'll look at the principles and you'll see that it's clear that you should obey God through me and stop everything you're doing. But like people in the military, you've been trained by the kind of Roman spirit, if you will, right? And it branches off into Europe and all over the world. You've been trained by the Babylonian spirit, by the Jewish kind of conservative and Jewish revolutionary spirits, right? To conform and walk the broad path to destruction like the masses of the Romans and the Jews in the story, who came together as a people and said, give us Barabbas. And the Romans didn't say, hey, you know what? We've heard of what's going on here. Pilate knows, and we're not going to let you do that. They followed their protocols, their customs, their racial cultures instead. Pretty straightforward, right? You need to understand that. No offense to anybody. No offense to white people, Jews, LGBT, or whoever. No offense to minorities. No offense to anybody who might take offense to this. This is part of the reality of the situation. I see it where I live in California. I live around a lot of white ladies and gentlemen, a lot of Hispanics. I see them making the mistake of conforming, and I live in one of the most kind of, you might say, kind of polite places in many ways. Perhaps maybe not on the planet, but in America. Okay, people here kind of stay to themselves. They tread lightly. They're not very argumentative for the most part. They just kind of, Morgan Hill, they kind of mind their own business. So a lot of the places I go in San Jose, unless they're rich people who are snobs or something, they really don't kind of make demands of you. They don't look at you like you're unimportant. Okay, it is what it is. Okay, so I don't live in the deep South where white people are kind of pissing me off all the time or something. I live in a place where people are somewhat neutral, relative, compared to other places. But their rejection of God is still there. Okay, neutral is a play on words for neutral. Again, the word neutral is a play on words for new troll. Okay, and it's referring to the minions of evil, not to be confused with the kind of white power structure as expression of Warcraft. Okay, when it comes to rich people, there's certain groups that are the main ones trying to fool you, and there's token minorities rolling with them. Okay, and you have to understand that. So when you look at your own culture as a cowboy, as a skater, as a jock, as an emo, as a rocker, or whatever, for example, for white people, and I'm saying this to help them out, okay? Before it's too late, time is short. You've got to realize that it comes down from the governing class's evil. The core of your cultures are the governing class. You work for them, you play by their rules, you follow certain unspoken rules and cultural rules and mores and traditions and customs and what have you. And that's why you're not targeted to the degree I am. And if you are targeted, it's not for the reason I am. Okay? Almost certainly you think like them. There's some conspiracy theorists who say interesting stuff, but they basically think like them to a certain degree, and almost always they're, just following orders or something. Okay. So this is, I'm just making this clear to you that this is key here, because we see that in the Bible. For example, in Judges 7, which I wanted to get to, and I wanted to get to before this point, I'm going to go ahead and run by stuff. I know a lot of my viewers, I think all my viewers are white at this point, I don't know, but, or at least most of them, okay, at least on YouTube. And so, again, I'm not speaking to a bunch of black supremacists, hate speech or something, just telling how it is. I want you to look at Judges 7, verse 12, where it says the Midianites, and it says the Amalekites. Now let's stop there. Amalekites. My name is Chukwuemeka. People usually call me Emeka or Emeka, which is E-M-E-K-A. If we look at the word Amalekites and we do the wordplay, the occult cut-ups, what have you, we get several things, right? El Set Emeka and Lai Tees Emeka. Okay, so the Set, right? Set, the opposite of God's Son, the Anointed One, the King of Kings. Okay, Set is a Middle Eastern counterpart is Baal. Emeka, right, goes back to Haro Aries. Ebo Eri is the Son of God coming down from the sky. Now, when we look at the stories, the Ebos don't say he has a falcon head and he's a pagan. No, but he has falcon-like features. That kind of goes without saying. It's like the sky, right? The sky, God and the heavens, okay? So Horus and Haro Aries, okay, is just another way of saying Jesus. And nobody knows how to describe it very well because it's a very complex idea. And no culture knew that much about it. Right? This is something that's like God. You don't know that much about God. You know some of the evidence. You don't know that much about God. So the opposite of Set can be said to be Christ and Horus, depending on how you define those ideas. Horus is a Greek word, right? So a lot of people say Haru and so on and so forth. Okay, whatever the name should be, the Son of God is what they're saying. Okay, it's like saying, hey, do that because it's good and don't do that because it's bad. Okay, if God has a son and there's some kind of stories that are not that long about him, and they don't know much about him, okay? And so the idea of the principles of evil is embodied by Set and corrupt kings and so on and so forth. And the principles of good is the hero facing the evil, right? Because one who's slack in his work is brother to one who destroys. So Horus, right? Horror can also mean face. So Horus, face us, okay? So we see again the word Amalekites. It's a male kites. There's something there, right? Flying in the sky, there's something there. But what's very interesting is the Emeka, the Lai Tees Emeka. That's what they've been doing here. Emeka, right? Chukwuemeka. Lai Tees Emeka. That's my name. And I'm the top martial artist ever possible. They knew that my tribe was going to be the one that presents the Son of God, right? Because the good tree bearing good fruit, no offense to anybody, I'm not a racist, I'm biracial, what have you. My dad's from, my patriarchal line's from there. It's part of why a lot of people don't like me. Okay, a lot of whites and Jews don't like me because my dad married a white woman. Like, he came here in the 60s and he married her like, the 70s or 80s. Okay, and, she's part Jewish from what I gather. When I look at my family tree, I see people look very much like Jews there. So she's, there's a lot of whites and Jews that don't like that my dad is not Jewish, and they don't like that I tell the truth about God. Okay. And these people have a lot of corporations and power, and they make the rules for the military, and they terrorize people and so on and so forth. Okay. So let's just go ahead and read through Judges 7:12 through the end. I only have like 5 minutes left. I didn't want to make this video this long, but there's a lot of important things I want to say. Trustworthy and worthy are connected, right? That's why the scripture's on the screen at the beginning. Okay. And if I remember, I'll put the scripture on the screen why God wouldn't send a message to an untrustworthy person. and someone that you couldn't easily identify. Because when you look at me, you know that I'm trustworthy, right? The wordplay, you know that the logic lines up. If you're a rational person, you see that that's the case, okay? You can kind of tell my heart. You can look at my videos. You can see what I've been saying for years. You can see I've been living with my parents. You can see I have no reason to lie. What I'm doing is not in the New World Order's best interests, okay? If people rally to me and I form a moral committee and there's transparency and we talk about moral precision and we talk about the difference between this and people who spit propaganda with their good cop, bad cop psychology, their good public figure, bad public figure psychology, you see that there's no way for me to do the New World Order's work, and I will never do their work. Okay, I've made it clear the whole time. Okay. So Judges 7:12. The Midianites, the Amalekites, and all the other eastern peoples had settled in the valley thick as locusts. Their camels could no more be counted than the sand of the seashore. Going back to Gog and Magog, right? The sand of the seashore. And again, these people represent anybody who's in adversity to God, right? The children of Abraham are those who would do what Abraham did, and do what Abraham did. The children of the devil are those who would do what the Midianites and the Amalekites at this point in the story are said to have done, if you take it at face value, right? Gideon arrived just as a man was telling a friend his dream. I had a dream, he said, a round loaf of barley, bread, came tumbling into the Midianite camp, right? The presence of God, okay? The body of Christ, the presence of God, the Spirit of God came tumbling into the Midianite camp. It struck the tent with such force that the tent overturned and collapsed. It struck their heart, their spirit, their souls, their ability to bring in worthwhile families, have worthwhile marriages and funerals, etc., and to live worthwhile lives. His friend responded, this can be nothing other than the sword or the Spirit of God through Gideon, the sword of Gideon, son of Joash, the Israelite. God has given the Midianites and the whole camp into his hands. When Gideon heard the dream and its interpretation, he bowed and worshipped. He returned to the camp of Israel and called out, get up, the Lord has given the Midianite camp into your hands. Dividing the 300 men into 3 companies, he placed trumpets and empty jars in the hands of all of them with torches inside. Again, revelation, right? They're pulling out bowls, which are like jars, and there's trumpets, right? Trumpets that sound, battle calls and signal various things, right? So dividing the 300 men into 3 companies, he placed the trumpets and empty jars in the hands of all of them with torches inside. Watch me, he told them, follow my lead. When I get to the edge of the camp, do exactly as I do. When I and all who are with me blow our trumpets, then from all around the camp blow yours and shout for the Lord and for Gideon, okay? For God Almighty and for the prophets, for the righteous, for Chukwuemeka. Okay, now keep in mind this is figurative first and foremost. Gideon and the 100 men with him reached the edge of the camp at the beginning of the middle watch. Just after they had changed the guard, they blew their trumpets and broke the jars that were in their hands. The 3 companies blew the trumpets and smashed the jars, grasping the torches in their left hand and holding in their right hands the trumpets they were to blow. They shouted, a sword for the Lord and for Gideon. While each man held his position around the camp, all the Midianites ran, crying out as they fled. When the 300 trumpets sounded, the Lord caused the men throughout the camp to turn on each other with their swords. So what is Revelation about? It's about the world transforming into an evil place, right? It was already a dog-eat-dog place. They say it's a rat race and the wolves eating the sheep. Now everyone's kind of a wolf and his sheep mixed together, and they're waging war against each other. So again, verse 22, when the 300 trumpets sounded, right? This is a symbolic number. The Lord caused the men throughout the camp to turn on each other with their swords. And you see here in popular culture, they say the Illuminati is the Committee of 300. We look at the mainstream Britannica and so on. They talk about Adam Weishaupt, who was a Jesuit teacher and monk, okay, which is a Catholic order, okay? So how people are being taught, how they're living. Now, you might say, hey, this is God's plan. They might find a way to thwart it. They won't. Because if you rebel against God, you are turning against yourselves and your families. Matthew 10, a family will be divided, right? 2 against 3 and 3 against 2. Mothers against, fathers against sons, mothers against daughters, right? Peoples against peoples. They're the children of Cain, destined to persecute their families, their brothers, what have you. All who remain have proven that they're the children of Cain, all who don't rally to me and are gathered in the cloud of my martial spirit, which is God's spirit. The army fled to Beth Shittah toward Zerah, as far as the border of Abel Meholah. Notice the word Abel's there. Near Tabbath, Israelites from Naphtali, Asher, and all Manasseh were called out, and they pursued the Midianites. Okay, so we're almost out of time here. Gideon sent messengers throughout the hill country of Ephraim, saying, come down against the Midianites and seize the waters of the Jordan ahead of them as far as Beth Barah.